Manchester United 0, Arsenal 1. Another loss for Manchester United. Another goal conceded now. United's worst goal difference. Most goals conceded in around 50 years for Manchester United. Another loss at home. Just, there's so many negatives, so many bad stats, so many problems at Manchester United in this day.
Let's just call it what it is, right? Ten Hag's record-breaking regs.
Yeah. It's exactly what we all thought we'd see at the start of the season. I thought we might see some records broken. I thought we might see a continuation of this unbeaten run at Old Trafford. I thought we might see Marcus Rashford doing back-to-back 30-goal seasons for the first United player to do that in who knows how long. I thought we were going to see some sensational stuff. And instead, we are shaping up to have the worst season we've had in 35 years. How has this happened? I know, lots of things go into it, and we'll get into the specifics of the Arsenal game, but it's just astonishing what we're seeing week in, week out at the minute, isn't it?
Mental, mate. Yeah, honestly, it's just... And, ultimately, today, you can put a lot of it down to availabilities. You can, right? And I actually thought today there was a lot of positives in the performance. And then it also put, for every positive, I go, hang on. And it raises an extra question. So I go, okay, positive. We look pretty good at times today. And negative, well, why has Diallo not been able to play football for us? Because I haven't seen him drop a clanger of a performance. And guess what? Everybody else in that team has done.
Yeah.
And then I see Amrabat played as a bit of a destroyer in midfield. And I go, it's a one-game sample size, but we didn't get dusted on transition the way we have done, the entire season. So is there something in that?
Yeah. It did highlight a couple of things, didn't it, where you go, this was a bit better today, and obviously the result wasn't better in Arsenal. We'll get into whether Arsenal got out of second gear or not, but certain things looked better, and they were coming from people who've barely had a chance for a lot of the season. The Amrabat thing is a good point. I thought he was very good today. Made a couple of mistakes here and there, but nothing compared to what we've seen out of Casemiro in that same position over the last couple of months. And like I said, just someone who's got a bit of energy, a bit of pace, good work rate, bit of physicality in there. All of a sudden,
Amrabat,
things look
sorry,
different.
I thought you were about Diallo, but yeah, the quality of Diallo, there was a quality to what he was doing. There was a confidence to what he was doing. I think Amrabat didn't look very confident. Like, on the ball, I didn't think he was very good on the ball. But off the ball, he just gave us something that we just haven't had all season, which is someone actually willing to dig in. And he dug in. And I thought, it's something as basic as that, but we've really needed it.
Yeah, and just on this performance, because we were speaking before the game, me and Jay, about the squad and it being, on the whole, first team and reserve and backups, subs, as one of the weaker squads I've seen from a Manchester United game, where it was a full-strength squad. And that's no knock on the academy lads, because they're just unknowns who are filling the gaps of first-team players who aren't available. But just looking at the overall quality, it just wasn't there, was it? And the idea of losing 1-0 to a team who's going for a title with a squad like that isn't the most embarrassing thing in the world. Do you take some positives from that performance, or does it just make you realise, how much better we could have been all season if we can put in a decent shift with those players?
Yeah, I think it does. I think, there's been a lot of people, not so much myself, although when we've seen the cameos of him, I've gone, no, actually, this kid's really worth it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've been demanding he starts all season. I haven't. But when we saw some cameos of him, I'm like, why can't we see some more of this? Why does Anthony get rushed back before him? And why are other people getting minutes before him? Because every time I've seen him, he's done all right. Obviously, he had a massive moment against Liverpool, but he's looked all right. I wouldn't mind seeing some more of him, please. And then he gets a start, and I think he was like, yeah, that was a perfectly acceptable performance. No one's going, oh my God, get Jadon Sancho off the Ballon d'Or shouts and let's put Ahmad in. But I think it was a solid performance from him. And I would argue Amrabat's was similar, and I think you could argue some of Amrabat's passing was timing because he's not been playing. Because he's like, what has he played really in a year at United? It feels like about 4 games, doesn't it?
Especially since Christmas, he's barely been on the pitch, it feels like. I know he's had a couple of injuries, but he started those few games at left back, didn't look great. Started a couple of games centre mid, didn't look great. And then when Casemiro and Mainu came back from injury, we've not seen him.
Yeah, so I thought You could put a lot of his passing down to timing, and I think if he plays again on Wednesday night, which I genuinely think he has to, like, you can't tell me any reason why he shouldn't play. Like, if he doesn't play, that's mental for me. Like, genuinely. I thought it was a really strong and solid performance, and literally what we've been lacking in that midfield. But I think, I'll put it down to match fitness. Why he, match fitness, match rhythm. Like, he was misplacing this. He actually lost the ball less than both McTominay and Mainu in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a real nice performance, and then again, it brings loads of questions up, like, why haven't we been seeing him? Like, and then, I just done a live then with Rio, and Rio was like, why can't we try even McTominay or Amrabat at centre half? And I'm thinking, well, okay, but then you play one of them at centre half, and are you just then asking for a different person than Casemiro to make the mistakes because they're not a centre half? Is it better the devil you know? Although, genuinely, I wouldn't have picked Casemiro in any position after the performance against Crystal Palace. Like, there's not often that I watch a performance from a player and go, you need to be dropped, but that was genuinely one of them for Casemiro against Palace.
Yeah. What did you make of their goal then? Because obviously Casemiro plays Havertz on that sideline. Then a combination of Casemiro not checking his shoulder for Trossard and Wan-Bissaka checking it and then going, oh, there's a player there and he's running past me. I won't do anything about that. Letting Trossard get into 4 yards out with an open goal in front of him. What do you sort of put that down to? Surely a player of Casemiro's age and experience doesn't need to be told to push out when the keeper goes long. Like, just because you're not a centre back, everyone in football knows that you have to push out faster than he was doing. Surely.
Yeah, and it was relatively early in the game as well. You can't even blame fatigue. That was shit. And I would argue, I don't get the impression Wan-Bissaka is a talker. Now, the rule in football is you don't get beat at your front post. That's goalkeepers, but also defenders. No one comes across you at the front post. You always protect that zone. If other areas and blah blah they happen, that's fine. Johnny Evans has to do better. But I wonder, yes, this isn't, people are going to go, oh, if you just said it's not Casemiro's fault, it's not what I'm saying. But does he get a shout from Wan-Bissaka? Because Wan-Bissaka's pretty poor at defending the centre and the back post anyway. Has Wan-Bissaka gone, man coming, or get across, or Cassie wake up, something? Because I think the keeper's already gone. I think Onana might even go a little bit too far towards the front post, actually. Because I think he's expecting the shot because of how... Who was it that ended up playing it? Can't remember who it was that played it. Has come real close. It was Havertz, wasn't it?
Havertz,
he's come real close to the front post before playing a pass. He's properly delayed it. So it looks like it's dragged Onana a little bit out of the centre of his goal, where maybe he'd have half a chance at saving it if he hadn't have done. Johnny Evans has to stop that. Casemiro has to do way better at getting across that man. And I wonder... No, he might have shouted, but it wasn't enough, was it? I think communication is so important in defence. You can't just watch stuff unfolding, especially fullbacks. Fullbacks being on the periphery of a defensive line, they are, to me, responsible for the organisation of the defensive line. People assume it's the ones in the middle. You always see the centre half, Joe. They're the ones controlling the tempo and the speed of the line. But when you've got the whole view of the rest of the line, the ones that should be controlling the offsides, the one that should be controlling runners and alerting to runners is the fullbacks, because they're the ones that they're looking across the line and they can see that shit. You should be checking your shoulder, 1,000,000%. I'm not absolving him of that responsibility. But also, if he's missed something, it's the responsibility of the people that can see everything to get the fuck across. And also, it was just stupid decision making in the first place, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a shame really, because like you said, I thought United had some decent spells and never really turned it into great chances, because we've scored 52 goals all season, and that's less than anyone in the top, I think, 13 of the Premier League. So we don't make loads of chances and we don't score enough goals. But we had some decent spells and we kept the ball in their areas very well, I thought, at times. Much better than we did, against Palace, for instance. Do you think that the performance, obviously, some of it maybe is self-motivation because you're at Old Trafford, you're playing against Arsenal, but do you think that performance hinted that maybe Ten Hag hasn't lost the dressing room? Because I think the Palace game was the first game where I really thought they do not give a shit. They don't care what he's telling them. They don't care about winning. They don't care about anything. I felt a little bit different after this one.
I don't know if I'd put a label on it like that. Okay. I think I would say, yeah, it was certainly a better performance than I expected. The amount of people I've spoken to today prior to the game, they're all going, "Oh, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? What do you reckon?" And I'm going, "We are getting shagged, lad. Like that is happening." And then for us to not only not get shagged, but to actually look right, really, in the grand scheme of things, kind of take it.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad, isn't it? It's so mad where we've got to. I was saying in the review, like, I'm sort of the same logic and the same sort of things you're saying there is what I was saying of, like, I almost am relieved that it went the way it did because of what I thought it would. But then you think, why do we have to be in that position where we're relieved that we're only losing 1-0 at home to a team that's won their 1 in 16? Like, the standards are so mad and upside down at the moment. Just one more on Ten Hag. The way he's speaking after games, I know some people are calling it sort of either delusional or kind of putting on a brave face and saying like the performances were good that weren't. But weirdly, part of me thinks it's working a little bit because any other manager that I've seen as a fan of United in the last 10 years get into this sort of run of results has felt way more certain to be sacked than Ten Hag does right now. Like, I think he might well go, but I also think he might well be here next season. Do you think the things he's saying, whilst looking a bit odd, are actually the difference between him being here and not being here? Because it doesn't feel like we're at complete panic stations, even though we've, I think, won one of our last 9 in the Premier League. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I think so, but I don't think what he says has any bearing on whether he stays or goes.
Right, okay.
And I would make the case that actually his comments suggest to me that he's actually aware of his future because he's not someone... I can't point to a specific phrase of anything he said here, but I can only say I think he knows he's staying because of some of the way he says things. Does that make sense?
I think some of
the phrases he uses, some of the terminology, some of the tenses he uses makes me think he's here next season. And I can't quite put my finger on why I think that. But they're not the sort of man that looks like he's like, anyway, you know where I am on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
managers get like a feel to them, don't they, where you think, oh, he knows he's gone. That's kind of what I'm saying. I feel like he's talking in a way that makes me think he's not being sacked. And maybe that's stopping him from being sacked. Like, maybe, like you said, he knows something we don't. Or maybe he's trying to convince the world and the owners that, actually, he's talking like he thinks he should still be here, and it's the injuries, and it's this, that, and the other, and a bit of bad luck. And, yeah, he's probably right. Maybe next season we could finish in the top. Like, I almost feel like it could be what you're saying, but it also could be he's convincing us of this by the things he's saying. Do you know what I mean? Rather than he already knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just looking for the rest of the season then, obviously, I say it all. We're not going to have a great season if we beat City. It'll be a much better season. But how much are you bothered about momentum? Or do you see the FA Cup as a standalone thing? Because if we don't beat Newcastle, who we always struggle against, and we don't beat Brighton, who
I think we might get a point the next 2 games, right?
Yeah.
And does that mean that, do you want some momentum going at the cup final? Why are you asking me that? Why are you asking me like you think we're going to win this cup final?
Yeah, but we could. You say it like it's never happened. City lost to Wigan not that long ago in the FA Cup final. We're almost as good as they were.
Joe.
Yes?
I play the Euro Millions.
See?
I am a gambler. And I believe in small chances. But we're not winning the FA Cup, Joe.
Don't say it.
And the only hope that we've got is you get all of the lads back.
Yeah. And
you put in, you have an Amrabat or something in midfield to actually stop the transitions, and you don't concede after 20-something seconds. And I don't know, but all right, all of that being said, we don't score goals though.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
So are we scoring against Manchester City?
Penalties. If you don't score for long enough, they just give you penalties. Do you know what I mean?
It's a good point. well made.
Just 0-0 it all the way. No, I appreciate we're obviously massive underdogs, but do you? In my head, I almost feel like those two things are separate. Or do you think if we beat Newcastle and Brighton, that would give us a much better chance of beating City, or do you just see that as this own thing in the distance on the hill that the players will either turn up for or they won't?
It's an irrelevant question because we're going to win none of those three.
Right, and that's going to be all from us. Very optimistic Stephen Howson to end the show there. Thank you very much for joining us. Another loss for Manchester United, although weirdly, like you said, it feels like it could have been a lot worse from the start of the day. So that's where we are as Manchester United fans at the minute. We're picking what type of loss we like. Absolutely unbelievable. Thank you very much for joining us. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you in a bit.